Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. You are Alan Jones, the chairman of the Parrot Society UK. I'm going to read a little bit of the mission statement out. So you want to be the world's premier association to provide help and expert advice on the welfare and conservation of all parrot species. And also, you're a retired avian veterinarian, which I think is really cool.
That's true, I am. I spent over 40 years as a veterinary surgeon, and after a few years qualifying, I gravitated towards treating birds. I'd always been interested in birds and bird watching through my grandfather.
Yeah.
And ended up, since about 1985, working exclusively with birds and primarily parrots. So that's been my interest.
So it's fair to say you're probably the right person to go to for these questions that I've got.
I would hope so, yes.
So, basically, I'm after the ring-necked parakeet.
Okay.
I've heard it's in the country. I've seen clips, snippets, and stuff like that.
Right.
And I've seen two myself. So not long ago, I was playing cricket in Coventry. This is, and I was fielding in the slips, waiting for the balls to come in or whatever. And I heard these chirps in the sky, and I was like, "What's that?" I looked up, two bright green birds flying over, and I was like, we don't have bright green green birds in this country. So I was like, well, what is that? So I did a quick Google search. It wasn't a woodpecker. And then I just thought, well, it must be a parakeet. It has to be.
Has to be, yes. So
obviously I did some research, and that's where we are right now. And
you missed an important catch in the process. looking up in the sky.
That's me in the slips. I've talked my way into the slips. It's the only way I've got there. But no, right. So basically, I've seen some in Coventry.
Right.
When I did my research, a little bit of research, I saw some in Kenilworth, which is a smaller town about 5 miles or so from Coventry. Yeah. But then I did some wider research, and it appears to me that ring-necked parakeets are in major European cities all over Europe.
That's right.
But where I'm a bit confused is, where are ring-necked parakeets from? Where do they originate? Where could you mostly find them?
Okay. Yes, there are no native parrots in Western Europe.
Yeah.
The ring-necked parakeet comes really mostly from India, Indian foothills of the Himalayas. There are also a subspecies in Africa. But these are parrots that live in comparatively cool climates, as you can imagine, up in the foothills of the Himalayas.
Yeah.
And they are incredibly successful. They have spread further west naturally, but they've also been very popular in aviculture. People have kept them as either pet birds or aviary birds for decades, many decades. And because they're attractive, characterful, they're great fun to have. And they breed quite prolifically.
Right.
So that's where they come from originally.
Yeah.
But then we need to move on to how they got to the UK.
Well, and this is what fascinates me, because I would have thought our climate would have got too cold in the winter. And I know, like you're saying, from the foothills of the Himalayas there, but surely is our climate suitable for a parrot? And obviously these have done well to be here already, but is it sustainable for them to be here?
Yes. People think of parrots as being tropical, subtropical birds living in the Amazon rainforest and that sort of thing. But there are a number of species, including the ring-necked parakeet, that do live in higher altitudes. There are birds called Pionus parrots that live in South America, and they live in quite cold areas. They are incredibly adaptable. People who keep the conventional tropical species of parrot over here will keep them in outside aviaries over the whole year round. And you'll see them in zoos, obviously, in aviaries as well. So that they adapt to our climate anyway. But these ring-necked parakeets particularly are used to that sort of extreme of temperature.
Fair enough. So how did they wind up getting here?
Right. There's an awful lot of apocryphal stories about how they got out in the wild in the first place. There are some say that during the filming of The African Queen back in 1950s, they were escaped or were released from the film studios in Isleworth, Also, Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy or Jimi Hendrix, they were supposedly kept these parakeets and also released them either deliberately or accidentally. These stories do the rounds, but they're not convinced that they are actually true. But they're out there. They're in the zone, and that's what people tend to believe. The likelihood is that most of them have escaped from aviary collections in people's back gardens in major storms, and a lot definitely got out in the major storm of October 1987.
Okay. So
and the other possible reason is deliberate release. Back in 1930 and again in 1952, we had quite major outbreaks of a disease called parrot fever, otherwise known as psittacosis, which is a very unpleasant, potentially fatal disease in people. And this obviously alarmed people, like the avian flu outbreak did a few years ago. So people that kept parrots at the time just let them go. And that would include not only ring-necked parakeets, but many other species as well. But it's the ring-necked parakeet that has survived because they are so adaptable and so successful at what they do.
So is there any potential for any other parrot to sort of have a go at living in England, or are they so robust that they're sort of one of a kind?
Another common one is the Quaker parakeet or monk parakeet that also lives free in particularly Western Europe, slightly warmer areas, Spain and southern France. I've seen them down there. A few are free living in the UK, but they're certainly not as frequent as the ring-necked parakeet.
Well, that's...
Most other species probably wouldn't survive too long out in the wild.
No, I just find it all really fascinating, and like just the concept of like where they came from. I think it's a really interesting thing. Like just there's no definitive sort of thing, and I suppose what like you said about the storm there, or the parrot fever, they're probably what you would associate as being the most not common. I can't think of the word. The most like respectable thought about it, because I like the Jimi Hendrix idea, but the storm sounds more suitable, I suppose. I
think that's the most likely reason.
So with accidental. That then, how many is there an estimate of like how many are here from when they started?
Well, they're certainly spreading further and further north. As you said, you've seen them in you say Lincolnshire?
Coventry,
that's right. The last estimate I've seen was back in 2015, so 5 years ago, with over 30,000 of them in the UK, which is a fair number. Initially in the London and the home counties, but they have been seen in the West Midlands, East Anglia, Lincolnshire, Lancashire, and there have been some recent reports of far north as Glasgow. So they're undoubtedly spreading north and spreading across the country.
So that's quite a lot. That's way more than what I thought was going to be.
It's a hell of a lot. Yes.
So, I think when you mention these places as well, they're quite urban. Are they naturally an urban bird, or do they normally stay in quite rural areas?
They seem to be unafraid of people, and they're opportunists. They will take advantage of whatever's around. They eat quite a wide variety of food, and naturally grains, seeds, leaves, berries, nuts. But obviously in the suburbs, people put food out on their bird tables for other wild birds. And the parakeets have taken advantage of this. And then people have thought, well, that's a nice attraction to see this green parrot sitting on their bird table.
I bet,
so that they put out more food, and the parakeets become even bolder. But they're certainly quite pugnacious, and they discourage other birds from getting to the food, so they hog the food source anyway, and the tits and the woodpeckers and the sparrows and whatever are chased away. So they take over.
So, because I know with this, that they've been classed as a pest. And you're legally allowed to destroy them. What's the thought process behind that? Are they not beneficial to the ecosystem, or are they too destructive? Or
they are. They're because of the type of food they eat naturally, as I say, grains and seeds. They will raid forage in farmers' fields and start devastating their crops of wheat and barley and whatever. And the farmers don't take too kindly to that. And because they are now appearing in such enormous numbers, in thousands, they can do a lot of damage. They're not quite as bad as locusts, but they can strip a lot of field. They're, strictly speaking, no, you can't just kill them willy-nilly. You do have to get permission to do so, and you can only do it on private land. So farmers or landowners will be able to cull the birds, but it doesn't apply to everybody in the population.
Yeah.
So you couldn't shoot a parakeet in your garden with an air rifle, for example.
Okay.
Without
so that's what I thought it was. I thought it was like if you see one, shoot it. That's what I was thought that was. But no, that's fair enough. If they're raiding farmlands, I understand that. But so with that then, is that to sort of like keep them around? Are we looking at keeping like parakeets for the long term? They're going to stay and that's it. We're not just going to leave them alone, or?
I would suggest it would be impossible to eliminate them completely.
Yeah.
I do see the time when it will become necessary to restrict their advance, if you like, because they are becoming so huge numbers, they're becoming so successful. Rather like the grey squirrel, it's not a native species. It's arrived and taken over to the point where some of the native birds that nest in holes in trees, like woodpeckers and so forth, are being ousted from their own territories by these things. So I can see the time when, yes, that some culling will have to take place, but they're here to stay, that we won't ever get rid of them 100% for sure.
Well, I suppose that's...
And I don't think we want to. It's a nice thing to have them flying overhead. As you say, they're quite vocal. The first thing you hear is that squawk as they fly across, and you look up and there's this green thing with a long tail flying over your head, and it's amazing.
It's it's really nice to see. Now, speaking on that, where is the best chance for me to potentially go and see one in this country?
Well, it depends where you live, but they are prevalent in the big parks in London, Hyde Park and Regent's Park. They exist. They live in the trees there. They built up quite large populations, and because they are in a public park which is frequented by a lot of people, they've got used to people, and they will come down and actually feed from your hand, take stuff from your hand. They will come down to bird feeders that are hung in the bushes in the parks with the other birds. Yeah. So you can see them up close and very personal. The other big place is Danson Park near Dartford, southeast London. There's a lake there which is surrounded by huge poplar trees, and there's a massive roost of them there, probably 2,000 or 3,000 birds. Really? And they roost in the trees overnight and wake up in the mornings and gradually take off and gather in groups of 30 or 40 and disperse around the area for their food, for their breakfast.
Yeah.
So Hyde Park, Regent's Park, Danson Park.
So London seems to be the area then?
Yes.
Yeah, the parks of London. Okay, well...
I live in South Buckinghamshire, and we have quite a few in the local parks up here as well.
Oh, okay. So they are spreading then. They are quite like all over the place.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, I think that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to head down to London. Okay. And I'll have a go at that. But I really appreciate you. Actually, I've got one thing actually. The ring-necked parakeet, right? They're called that because they've got rings, a black ring and a rose-coloured ring on their neck.
That's correct.
What's the difference between the male and the female in that sense?
Right. It's the male bird that has that distinctive ring. There is a very, very faint mark, should we say, in the back of the neck of the female, but it's the male bird that has this dark ring. It's a combination of black and pink feathering. That's why you get the alternative name of rose-ringed. Yeah. And it develops in the adult male. So at about 2 to 3 years of age, they get this distinctive ring.
Lovely. And is there any difference between the male and the female in terms of like characteristics? Are they pretty much the same, or?
Pretty much the same, I would say. The body colour is the wild, free-living the parakeets that we see are basically green, with a scarlet red beak and this black neck ring on the male. In captivity, they are bred in alternative colours. We see them in blue, white, yellow. There are several colour mutations that have arisen in captivity. But they don't. If they escape, they don't survive very long in the wild. They intermingle with the green population, and the normal green coloration appears back in their offspring because it's a dominant color.
Yeah.
But yeah, apart from this ring on the neck, the male and female are pretty much identical. Character-wise, I'd say they're much the same. The male may be a little bit more pugnacious, especially in the breeding season, but they're very, very incredibly social birds.
Lovely. Well, I really appreciate you coming to talk to me. Thank you so much for the information. It's been fascinating. Right. And yeah, I'll let you get on with your day. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Alan.
If I may put in a plug, the Parrot Society has a website, the parrotsociety.org. Sorry, start again. The parrotsocietyuk.org, and there is an article about these free-living ring-necked parakeets on that website.
Lovely.
But yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope you find something in the park.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Good luck.